So yeah, as Sven said, I'm Caroline, and I guess in my career up to now, I've done a lot of very disparate things. But in a sense, I've always been working in, I like to think in ways of shortening or reducing barriers to entry, or making things more accessible, whether it's knowledge, sound, and now thinking about the economy. I joined Etsy around 4 months ago, and a lot of people said, why on earth would you leave SoundCloud? It's one of the hottest startups in Europe. Everyone in America is talking about them. You must be bonkers. But the chance to join Etsy was the chance to join a company that's trying to think about the world economy in a different way. And that was incredibly inspiring to me, and it was a call to action for me. And so that's why I left SoundCloud and joined Etsy. And I hope that by the end of this talk, you'll understand a little bit of what we're trying to do, and maybe you'll think about ways in which you can also help shape the global economy. So the first thing I want to talk about is massive change. The world, as we know it, is changing so rapidly in many, many different ways. We've got technological revolutions. You know, essentially the World Wide Web has destabilized a huge number of industries. Globalization, I think we're only really starting to understand what globalization actually means. Sorry? It keeps, sorry. My presentation keeps moving forward. I'll have to work on that. So, sorry, globalization. We've got colossal demographic shifts, which is a big problem, of course. We've got an aging population in Europe. We have serious environmental problems. If you look at just the weather patterns in these last years, it's been, or this last year, it's been absolutely bonkers. And all of these things are destabilizing existing businesses. And so we talk a lot in technology about disintermediating business models, new business models that take old businesses, you know, destroy them, make way for the new. And there's, especially in the tech world, we're excited about all of these new disintermediating business models. But that's not to say that traditional business models are bad or wrong, or there's anything wrong with the way we were doing things before. The question is, how can we evolve? And one of the important questions is it possible today for small businesses to have a voice? Can a local living economy exist? Can a local living economy thrive? So when you think about, when I say local living economy, I mean an economy where you source all your materials and you sell everything in the exact same place. Can a local economy exist today? And I think one of the most important things is if we think about consumers, the people who we sell things to, can they value provenance and authorship as much as they do price and convenience? So is it possible for today's consumers who are used to getting everything dirt cheap to say, you know what, it's more important for me to buy something that I know where it's come from, that it's come in a humane way, it's been made in a humane way, and that the money that I'm spending goes back to the people who actually invested in it. Is it possible to convince the consumers of today that this is a better way to invest their money than in the cheapest things around? And I think it is. And it's actually technology that's getting us there. So with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, barriers to market entry started to increase at an incredibly rapid pace, mainly for small manufacturers. So barriers to entry in a lot of different shapes. The first is, where do you sell your goods? Where do you actually have a market to sell your products? If you've lost that local square where you can sell your products, you can no longer interface directly with your clients. You actually have to find someone to sell your goods for you. A second issue of barrier to market entry is materials. Buying raw materials has become more and more expensive for manufacturers, especially if you're saying, I want to buy materials that are of high quality, that I know where they're coming from. That's a barrier to entry. Another barrier to entry is capital. Getting money to start your company is very, very difficult, but also the amount of money that you need to start a company is incredibly, incredibly high. And then I think the last barrier to entry that's important to think about is insight. And when I talk about insight, I mean two different kinds. The first is just basic business knowledge. How do I run a business? What is accounting? Do I need a lawyer? All these really important bits of information that you need to run a successful business, because you can't just have a great product. You also need to know how to run a business. And the second part of customer insight that's incredibly important, I think is often underestimated, is customer insight. Understanding how people perceive your products, understanding how to improve those products so that you can make your target audience happier and ideally want to continue using that product for as long as they possibly can. And the web has, of course, changed all of that. We now have these things that we like to call networked platforms. So when I talk about a networked platform, I mean a website that harnesses the input and ingenuity of a large group of people to accomplish complex tasks. A great example of that is Wikipedia. You know, you've got hundreds of thousands of people around the world editing the site collectively to create a massive knowledge base. And not only that, it's a communication channel. So we have all of these platforms that bring together many, many people and create very direct communication channels. It seems like it's conflicting, but it's actually not. So if we go back to these ideas of barriers to entry, the first is access to knowledge. So since the dawn of the web, essentially knowledge is becoming democratized. I wouldn't say that it is democratized, but it is becoming democratized. If you have initiative and you have access to the web, you can find answers to your questions. And it can be, you know, basic business training. You can take online business classes. You can find out sort of the basic information that you need to run a business. What I think is also very, very exciting is you've got all these networked sites like Quora, where you can ask questions and get very, very smart people to answer your questions. So if you go onto the site Quora, you know, and you ask a question about setting up a company, it's very possible that, you know, the CEO of one of the world's most exciting tech companies could answer your question. I mean, when has that been possible before? That's pretty exciting. The second big change is amount and access to capital. So you don't need as much capital as you used to. Suddenly we're living in this shared economy, or the peer-to-peer economy. You know, and so what does that actually mean? It means, so for example, space. You can work in a co-working space. You don't need to rent an office to start working. You know, you don't need to buy your own servers. Servers are extremely expensive if you're running a website. You can just rent them from Amazon Web Services. You know, you can rent a lot of different things. I think a cool startup that I hope comes to Germany soon, and hopefully Poland as well, is a company called Taskrabbit, which means you have people to take care of very small tasks for you. So I personally can't afford a personal assistant. I don't think I really need a personal assistant, but it would be great if I could have someone pick up my dry cleaning every so often. And these are these ideas of shared economy. Airbnb is another great example of that peer-to-peer economy. But on top of that, you don't necessarily need a bank anymore to get money to start your business. So you can use Indiegogo or Kickstarter to get that initial capital to get your prototype launched. You can say, you know what, I don't need to go and convince a bunch of guys in suits that this is a brilliant idea, because they're never going to get it anyways. I'm going to go to my peers and I'm going to ask them to give me an amount of money that is reasonable to them, and in that way I'm going to be able to get this prototype launched, and based off of that then decide whether it's worth following this business or not. It's about creating that minimal viable product. So yeah, you don't need as much money, and you can get money in a lot of different ways. And then the last thing is, of course, the market, this barrier to entry. Where do you sell your goods? So this is where Etsy comes in. So Etsy is a C2C platform where any maker can sell their products to anyone in the world so long as there's an internet connection. So Etsy is a network platform that brings together small entrepreneurs that create a massive market force. So on Etsy, you can sell three kinds of things. You can sell supplies, so that's, you know, it's basically raw materials for making things. You can sell vintage items, anything that is 20 years old or older, and handmade goods. So that's anything that you have produced yourself or produced within a collective. And what's important there is that we are trying to connect the consumer directly with the maker. So there is no middleman. That means that when you're buying something on Etsy, you buy it directly from the person who's made it. And we're pretty successful doing this so far. We were founded in 2005. We are the largest platform for handmade goods in the world. We have over 800,000 active sellers. And I think that word active is incredibly important. When I say 800,000 active sellers, that means those are 800,000 people who are currently selling something on our site right now. The numbers are actually out of date because this slide is a month old. We have 19 million customers from over 150 countries. Every month we have over 42 million unique visits. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of products. We have over 15 million listed items now, actually. That's out of date as well. And we also have a massive market impact. So up to, by the end of, sorry, I'm a bit tired. I got up at 4:30 this morning to come here, or 4 o'clock this morning to get here. But this year we've had a turnover of over $600 million US. And of that $600 million US, we only take a 3.5% commission on each sale. That's a lower commission than any other platform out there offers, because we really want to make sure that our makers keep as much money in their pocket as possible. So that means that this year, basically, $500 million has gone directly back into the pockets of those 800,000 small entrepreneurs. And I should also add that we as a company have been profitable since 2009. So we're not a nonprofit. We're not, we're not, out here with a charitable cause. What we want is to create successful businesses around the world, essentially be the hub to help these businesses become successful. And that's based on a few different tenets. The first is that we believe very much in transparency. So anyone can open a shop on Etsy, so long as their products are handmade. And anyone can buy something on Etsy, so long as they have access to the web. And as I already mentioned, the money that you spend goes directly back to that person. And what's great about that is it leads to greater transparency. You know where your money's going. You know the story behind the person who made that product. And so the customers really love it. And of course, the sellers love it because they're able to sell to people who really appreciate their goods. When I speak to our different designers, they talk about, I just sold a scarf to someone in Japan. And the fact that someone in Japan is wearing my scarf and appreciates the work that I do is an incredibly empowering thing, as opposed to just sending it to a retail store and then not knowing what happens after that. What's incredibly important about this method is that it's very decentralized. We don't decide what's going to get sold on Etsy. We don't decide how expensive anything will be. We don't decide what's going to get, how people present their products. But what that means is that the individual sellers, the individual entrepreneurs, they can experiment a lot. So that means they can take lots of different photos of their products, see what people click on most, see what kind of pictures create the most kind of conversions. They can get direct customer feedback. They can actually write to the people who bought their product and say, hey, did you like this? What did you like? What didn't you like? So it means that there's a lot more control for the designers. They can suddenly have direct feedback from their customers, and they can also look at all the different metrics, see how many people, what keywords people use to find their products. And, all of this sounds very businessy, but at the end of the day, when we make things to sell them, you have to sell them, and you need that business knowledge to be able to become profitable and continue to make the things that you love making. So essentially, what we have on Etsy is a decentralized model of commerce that encourages experimentation and self-sufficiency. So our sellers are encouraged to do whatever they need to do to become a viable, independent business person. And that means that on our platform, it's not us who come up with all the brilliant ideas. It's actually our sellers who come up with the best product improvements. It's our sellers who tell us how to improve the site and how they're going to be able to make more money at the end of the month. what's incredibly important about network platforms like Etsy or Airbnb is that they give entrepreneurs a voice like they've never had before. They can decide how they want to run their business. But more importantly, they can cooperate with other designers and business people to figure out what works best. So on Etsy, we have something called Teams, which is where, we have something called Teams, which is where our sellers get together every month, and so we have a team in Berlin. They get together in someone's atelier every month, and they talk about which accountant should I use. You know, I just had this problem with the tax authorities, or you know, should I get a new lawyer? And so we really encourage our sellers to work with each other and find other people who are facing the same problem, so together they can solve those problems. Additionally, because suddenly the makers are selling directly to their client, to their customers, there's no middleman in a sense. So it means they can decide how successful they want to be. If they only want to sell 20 products a year, that's fine. That's up to them. They don't have to manufacture 500,000, 100,000 products. If they're happy, if they, you know, they can define their own version of success. And I think, especially in the West and in North America, we think of success as like $1 billion. You know, when you start a company, you want to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. I don't think that's how everyone thinks. You know, success really varies from person to person, and I think, especially as a creative individual, you know, you need to think about how much money do I need to make to be happy? How many products do I want to get out there in the world to be a satisfied individual? And when you give people the power to control their market, they can suddenly define exactly what success means to them. And we really focus on entrepreneurship. So we spend a lot of time trying to teach our sellers how to become a better business person. Like, how do they price their products? So something that is surprising, that I found surprising, that a lot of people didn't really think about when saying, okay, I'm going to sell this for 20 euros, is thinking about, okay, how long did it take you to make the product? How much did your materials cost? How much do you want to be paid per hour? You know, once you put in all of your basic costs, double that, that's wholesale. Double that again, that's retail. So yes, you should be selling this product for 100 euros or 150 euros. You need to think about these questions, and that's what we spend a lot of our time working with our sellers, teaching them about, because again, you know, it doesn't make sense for you to be underpricing yourselves, and you may make more sales in the short term, but long term, you're going to have difficulty building a business. I think what's also interesting about Etsy is on our platform, more than 3/4 of our sellers are women, and many of them are running their businesses from home. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, we're also trying to redefine entrepreneurship. Again, it's not about some guy in a suit going and creating an app and selling it for $1 billion. It's about someone bringing money back home, doing something that they care about, completely under their own terms. So essentially, we've been able to create a new kind of entrepreneur, which is really an old kind of entrepreneur. It's almost like a medieval craftsperson who goes to the market and sells their goods. Through the power of many, you know, they've been able to lose the middleman, and it allows entrepreneurs to focus on craftsmanship and making the best possible products they can. You know, and this, of course, suits a new kind of consumer that we're seeing. You know, these consumers, we can call them bobos, we can call them lohas, lots of different ways to talk about them, but they're not as interested in hyperconsumption. They want to spend the limited income that they have in a responsible, thoughtful, and connected way. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are in, I would say, Generation Y. I'm Generation Y. We're the first generation that's not going to be as well off as our parents. We are not going to have as much money as our parents. And that means that we have to think about how we spend our money in a completely different way. So consumers now are becoming more thoughtful. They want transparency. They want sustainability. And they want to buy products that also come with a stronger sense of responsibility. And all of this is part of a quiet revolution that's changing the face of our post-Fordist economy. Network platforms are allowing for collective buying and even collective bargaining in an unabashed market format. So when I talk about collective bargaining, a lot of our teams, so our sellers, will get together and buy products. at a lower price because you have all the people who knit and they'll go and buy yarn together at a much lower price. We also have teams in the United States who formed political groups to actually lobby for health insurance. So it's more than just people getting together and talking about stuff. It's people actually making impacts on the communities in which they live. And this is all a part of the sharing economy, which I've spoken about a few times, this peer-to-peer economy. And you would think that it's at odds with capitalism, but it's not. It's actually in step with the basic tenets of it. Businesses exist for profit, the market is completely competitive, and entrepreneurs have the goal of accumulating wealth. But there's one important caveat with the way we do it at Etsy. We're not doing it at the cost of the greater good. It sounds really hippie. It sounds a bit cheesy, but it's something that's very important for us at Etsy. We are registered as a B corporation. I highly suggest you all go online afterwards and check out B corporations. So B Corps are a legal entity that were created in the United States, and it's a rigorous certification. It's sort of like fair trade or LEED. And what this certification says is that it's a private enterprise that has a focus on public good. And we have to every year go through testing, and it means, like, for example, in our Berlin office, we have to weigh all of the garbage that we throw out. We have to weigh all of our compost. Yes, in our tiny Berlin office, we have a worm composter. We have to show how much electricity we use. We have to show that we pay all of our employees fairly. And we have to be transparent about those numbers. So we have to publish our numbers. So we are very, very open about what we're doing. And we believe that we can harness independent craftspeople around the world to support small business. So at Etsy, we're using a pretty market-driven approach to achieve our vision of a more sustainable, humane, and efficient economy. So it's more than just an online marketplace. We're basically demonstrating that it's possible to run a business sustainably, responsibly, and profitably, all with people at the center. Thanks.